local media partners. We so appreciate everybody joining us, and we can't wait for the day that we can all be in one room rather than virtual. But for now, it's still better than nothing. So first, the Chief's going to have a couple opening remarks, and then we're just going to open it up for questions, and I'll help moderate the Q&A. So without further ado, Chief Lavelle.
Thanks, Tina. Appreciate the open. Thanks, everyone, for being here today. I'm happy to take some time with you. I know it's been a little while, and I look forward to the day where we can all be in person and I can talk to you without a mask on. So hopefully that day is in the near future. I think it's pertinent that I talk about just a couple things that have been in the media lately involving some internal issues here at the Police Bureau. First, as you all know, the PPA, Portland Police Association president, stepped down recently. This matter is currently under investigation, so I can't say a whole lot about it. But I really do want to let people know that community trust is very important to me. You hear me talk about it a lot. And whenever we have allegations or questions around issues where someone may have done something wrong, I realize it has an impact, a negative impact on community trust. And I know people want to know that their police officers are doing the things they're supposed to be doing and doing them in a way that they're supposed to be doing them. So, like I said, it's under investigation now, but as we get more information and things unfold, we'll be able to make the appropriate decisions on that issue going forward. And then also, one of our commanders was at a community meeting and made some comments about voting the district attorney out of office. That's been looked at by the Independent Police Review. Their initial assessment is that there's not a violation of policy there, but that's also being looked at the state level too as well. So we'll wait to see what the outcome is there. But from my perspective, the district attorney's office has always had the purview to decide what cases get charged and don't get charged. Our job as the police is to give them good cases, good information, good evidence to make their charging decisions. And for me, I expect my commanders to be out engaging with community, having these conversations, to be candid and honest, but also to be respectful and fair to our law enforcement and criminal justice partners. So as we get more information on that issue as well, we'll address it in the appropriate manner. But I just wanted to talk about those two things right off the bat, as they've been in the news recently. And then gun violence. That's something that's been plaguing our city this year and really since the second half of last year. So I want people to know there's been a lot of discussion behind the scenes. A lot of community partners have come to the table and asked what they can do to be a part of the solution around gun violence. There's been a lot of conversation with the mayor's office, with folks from the county, city council, and community. We have a proposal in to city council for some suggestions on how the police bureau can be involved in this solution as well. So we're waiting to see what the outcome is there. And we're also looking at some potential partnerships around investigations with our federal partners. That hasn't been solidified yet. There's still some memorandums of understanding and things of that nature that have to be worked out. But just know that there's a lot of work being done to address gun violence in the city, and that work's ongoing. So without any further ado, I want to leave ample time for questions. So at this point, I'll open it up to questions.
Thank you, Chief. First, we have Wright Gazaway from K2. And we'll get you unmuted, right? And
yeah,
if you can put your hand down, thank you.
Yeah, my question is in regards to the PPA situation. Have any officers been taken off the street as a result of that review, and how long do you anticipate that investigation taking?
It's hard to say how long the investigation will take because, as we get into it, we, could possibly uncover additional interviews that have to be done and additional investigation. I can tell you the PPA president he is working out of North Precinct. He's not off the street. But he is still working, and we're going to begin the investigation soon. There are some procedural things as far as notification and interview setup and things of that nature that need to take place. But we're hoping to do that in a relatively quick time period, but you never know what's going to pop up that needs extra investigation and take extra time.
Thank you. Next we have Liz Burton affiliation or which outlet?
Yeah, I'm with Coin News. I'm wondering, with the new changes to the Enhanced Community Safety Team, is this team, other than the Oversight Committee, different than the Gun Violence Reduction Team, which was disbanded over the summer, or is it essentially the Gun Violence Reduction Team just being brought back again? Are there any differences in the two teams now?
Yeah, that's a good question, Liz. The Enhanced Community Safety Team is really focused on investigations, not so much the proactive uniform piece that was more akin to what GVRT was. We do have had some conversations about what it would look like to have a uniform patrol piece back, but I think the real question is how will it be different from GVRT? I think we want to come back to this work in a way that is different. It's more transparent, better informed, more oversight, and I think that's what the community wants. So I think the community steering piece that's been talked about for this particular effort, should it come to fruition, would be very important, to have people from the community closely connected to the work, who could vouch for the work, who could have input on the work, and if there's issues with the work, they have the ability to push for changes and to make decisions around how the work's being done. And I think that's something that was missing from our previous efforts. And like anything, we want to look for ways to do what we do better. It wouldn't serve us or the community to just come back to the work in the same way and not expect to kind of meet the same pitfalls that we have in the past.
Great, next we have Jonathan Levinson.
Hey, good afternoon, Chief.
Hey, Jonathan.
Does the Bureau have a plan to come back into compliance with the settlement agreement, and why hasn't it been communicated to the Department of Justice?
Yeah, I was just talking about that today, actually. We're working on a plan. There's several issues and a lot of moving parts to that. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're going to need to have a plan to come back into compliance. Our goal has always been to be in and stay in compliance and get through the settlement agreement. So we are going to have to do that. We're working closely with the Department of Justice, and I think eventually we will come up with a plan of some type in working with the city and the Department of Justice to figure out what the right next steps are in order to be back in compliance.
Great, and just a reminder, if you guys can also state your outlet that you're associated with so that we know. It's harder for the chief to get to know you, and it's harder when we're not in person, so I appreciate that. Sarah Hurwitz?
Hey, thanks, Chief. Sarah Hurwitz with KPTV Channel 12.
Hey, Sarah.
Hi. I was curious, so, I've been covering a lot of stories about the gun violence issue, and, just a couple of weeks ago, the mayor, announced that $2 million for more of this proactive policing on the streets of Portland. I'm just curious your general reaction to that. I mean, this is something that it seems like, you've been asking for, and in that memo back in December, you even asked more for that proactive team. So I'm curious what you think about that and kind of where you feel the Bureau goes from here.
Sure. When we went away from the gun violence reduction team, we lost funding this past fiscal year as well. So in order to really reconstitute an effort, a consistent, built effort that's got a structure to it around gun violence, we needed additional funding. So that's, I think, where the mayor's ask for the $2 million came from. As many of you know, we've put additional investigative resources towards gun violence as we saw the spike this summer, and we have throughout. But I think it's required, to me, I think the question was, is there more that the police can do? Is there another way where we can still assist in bringing down the number of shootings and homicides? And that's where the idea of reconstituting a new and improved gun violence team came into play. But in order to do that, it would require additional resources.
And next we have Tess Risky.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
Yep, I can hear you, Tess.
And by the way, I'm from Willamette League. So my question is, Last week, the mayor called on former PPA President Brian Hunziker to explain the reason for his resignation. So I'm wondering, do you agree with the mayor that Officer Hunziker should explain the details behind why he resigned? And also, have you personally spoken with Officer Hunziker about his role relating to the leak of the hit-and-run incident?
Now, I haven't spoken to Officer Hunziker. I did see the mayor's comment, and I do think he will reveal that during the process that we have laid out and we've all agreed upon. So I think there will come a time in the very near future where we will learn exactly what actions PPA President Hunziker took leading up to his resignation. So I feel like we'll know that in due time, but it has to be part of the process.
Hi, good afternoon, Chief Lavelle. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I got you, Shane.
Hi there. Shane Dixon Kavanaugh from the Oregonian. Chief Lavelle, so in the last couple of weeks, we have learned that a Portland police officer may have doxed the Multnomah County District Attorney. We have the East Precinct Commander talking about voting the District Attorney out of office, and another member of the Portland Police Bureau possibly leaked information against a city commissioner to politically damage them. Do you feel that as police chief you hold some responsibility for these actions of officers at the Portland Police Bureau?
You know, I feel like where I sit as the police chief, you are ultimately responsible for the things that happen in your organization. But at the same time, people have to take personal responsibility for the actions that they do as well. And I think for me, it's important for me to have expectations and have systems in place that, you know, find things that are outside of the values or outside of the directives of the organization and have ways to correct those when we find them. And I think that's just part of good management. So I think, you know, to answer your question, I would say yes, and you know, that we have to also weigh the personal responsibility. But I think from where I sit, it's really about the overall, I wouldn't say culture per se, but the overall kind of approach from top down, making sure we have the appropriate expectations and systems in place to keep these things from happening in the future.
Does it trouble you that these things have happened in quick succession of each other?
Yeah, it does.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, whenever you have these things happen in an organization our size, you're going to have things like this happen. But these things are in many ways self-inflicted injuries of sorts that could be avoidable. So I think for us it's about setting the clear expectation of what we expect our people to be doing and not doing, and then if we find that they're doing things they shouldn't be doing, holding them accountable and having systems in place for corrective action.
So what is the expectation?
Shane, I'm sorry. We're going to have, that's like 4 questions, and I want to be fair. So if you have more questions, we'll get back to you. But I'm going to skip to Mike Benner, please.
Hey, Chief. Mike Benner with KGW. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, I hear you, Mike.
So this is kind of piggybacking off of Shane, because he beat me to the punch. But I'm just curious, in your opinion, Chief, he's mentioned it. We all know about these incidents. Do you think these are an indication of a much bigger problem within the Bureau? I mean, how concerned are you about what's going on? I mean, should the public be concerned about, who's in uniform for PPB?
I think this is a broader issue that I think we're looking at or going to look at here at PPB. I think, we have good people that work here. They go out every day and do good work. Is that to say that, if you have 1,000 people, I think we have just over 1,000 between our sworn and professional staff, that there's never going to be some people that are doing things they shouldn't be doing? Any organization of any size has that. But I think you have to look at it from an organizational point of view. And I think you have to be willing to look at it and answer, ask that question and get answers to that question, whether that's, some outside review or some internal review. But I think it's a fair question, and I think, you have to be able to look critically at your organization and make sure you're performing in a way that's consistent with what the community expects and what the organization expects and what's in your directives and policies.
And next we have Jonathan Levison.
Part of me wants to stay on this. I feel I would love some more specifics on, what that accountability looks like and whether or not you think there is again, kind of a similar question, is there's a broader breakdown in discipline and morale at the Bureau that is leading to some of these leaks, and how leadership goes about addressing that and fixing that within the rank and file.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's something that we're going to look at, and I think it's something that's important. It's a good question, and I think when you have these happen, it brings up the broader question of, your structure and your
What does that mean? Is something you're going to look at? What does that mean?
I mean, something we'll review. We'll, either have some external or internal review that hasn't been decided yet, but, it's still really early in a couple of these. Like, even in the instance of the PPA president, we still don't really know exactly what happened. Oh, did I get muted by the host?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Something happened there, Chief.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You were just cut off when you were saying that, it hasn't been decided about an internal or external review yet.
Yeah, but we will have some type of review, internal, external. That conversation is happening. And, even in the instance of the PPA president, we don't know exactly what happened yet either. But I think it's a fair question, and anything that speaks to the overall, culture of your agency, you have to be willing to take a critical look at. You can't bury your head in the sand and just say, no, there's no problem here.
I'm going to stick on this topic, Strike Gasaway, with K2. I certainly understand your point. When you have a large organization, there will be issues, but what's unique to PPV is the discipline process is lengthy, and very few details are shared with the public, which leads to accusations that there's not much transparency. Can you just discuss what you've said to your officers in wake of these leaks about privacy, about not sharing information? And I know there's a difference in a tip and just giving documents out. Can you just tell us what you've told your officers when it comes to these leaks?
Yeah, I tell my officers that the expectation is that they'll adhere to our directives and our policies about release of public records and things of that nature. And I talk to them all the time about trust and how the things that we do, even, allegations of things or just questions about how things transpire, those have an impact on how the public views us. And if we want to gain and build on public trust, we have to be doing things in a way that the public can trust in. And those are the kinds of things I tell my officers all the time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, this is Tess from Willamette Week again. I just wanted to follow up on something you said earlier. I wasn't sure if I understood correctly. I think you mentioned that you're very soon going to begin an investigation related to Officer Hunziker. It was unclear. Is the police bureau already investigating him, or what does that process look like?
Yeah, that incident is under investigation, but there's various steps in the investigation where interviews take place and things of that nature. So that process is happening.
Chief, this is Jonathan Levinson again. Slightly different topic. Apologies to my colleagues if they wanted to stay on that. But how many of the 21 homicides so far this year have been referred to the DA?
Ooh, I would imagine all of them get referred to the DA, but I don't have that number off the top of my head. I think we're at 22 homicides for the year, actually, now.
Sorry, I was having some issues where it wasn't letting me unmute. So you guys have carried on. And I think, was that Wright who just asked?
That was Jonathan.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, so Wright is next.
Okay, on the gun violence, specifically the patrols, there seems to be some resistance on council to re-implementing a patrol function. Have you had any discussions with members of council specifically about this, specifically the ones who are a little hesitant, and what have those conversations been like?
We did visit with all the city commissioners and just kind of gave them the opportunity to ask any questions, and just kind of laid out what our plan would be. And I understand that there could be some concerns about a uniformed police presence doing that work, given the history too with our gang enforcement team, then our gun violence reduction team. But I do feel that there is a lane for police to have an effective way to impact the gun violence we're seeing in the city. And for me, it's really just figuring out a way to come at it that's got the support of the community, that's got transparency, that's going to be well communicated and different and better from our previous efforts. And I think that's the case we laid out to the commissioners. Some of them had specific questions about it, but I think they're really mulling whether this is something that they'll support or not.
And next we have Liz Birch.
Coming back to the rise in gun violence, I'm wondering how much of that you blame on the understaffing issues at PPB and what it would take to get you guys back to the staffing level you need.
Yeah, our staffing is low. I think at the end of the month, we'll have lost 119 sworn officers since July 1 of last year. And I was just informed today that there's 4 more who are in processes with other agencies. So when you lose that number of people and you don't have the budget to replace them, it becomes tough. We've had to consolidate some of our specialty units. Our traffic unit, our canine unit, and our narcotics unit have been pushed back to patrol to, one, help us save on overtime, but also to help us answer calls for service in a timely manner. So, I mean, having a small number of officers comparative to what you had, a year ago does have an impact on your ability to be proactive and to do the things that you want to do to be able to contribute to community safety. The traffic division is a great example. I mean, that's very important work, and our traffic fatalities are up. So we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to manage the resources as best we can, but also try to do everything we can to make sure the important work's getting done that's going to keep Portlanders safe.
And next we have Tess Risky.
Hey, so my question's back on the PPA president topic. I'm wondering, Chief Lavelle, do you personally know what the quote-unquote mistake is that Officer Hunziker made that led to his resignation?
No, I don't. And I don't think that's something we won't know until the investigation is complete, or at least interviews have been completed. And I think, it's sometimes perilous to jump to conclusions about what happened. The truth is, right now, until we actually have some information from the investigation, we don't know exactly what happened.
And next we have Mike Benner.
Hey, again, Chief, you just mentioned the rise in traffic fatalities, and I asked this question knowing that you're probably not thoroughly briefed on every single case that's affected. But I am curious if you know anything about this case up in the area of North Portland, where the victim, Errol Reese, was run down and killed by, I believe, a guy by the name of Roy Bennett. But what's interesting to me about that one is they're calling this an intentional hit and run. Wondering if you can shed any light on what happened there, if you've been briefed on it.
No, I don't have the particulars on that one, but I can look into it and get back to you. I can reach out to my folks who have more info on that.
I think it's fair to say that is a rare circumstance.
Yeah.
A lot of our hit and runs, especially our traffic fatalities, are due to either someone driving drunk or driving fast. That is a rare instance, and since it is, I think, a manslaughter case, we may be limited on what we can share. But if you circle back to the PIO, I think we've released everything we have at this time, but we'll see if there are any updates. Next we have Shane Dixon Kavanaugh.
Hi there, Chief Lavelle. Just making sure you can still hear me.
Yep, I got you.
Okay, great. So I just wanted to ask again, getting back to the doxing, the leaks, precinct commanders politicking at public forums. All this stuff is going to be investigated by internal affairs, but as people have pointed out, these types of investigations do not really have a lot of public disclosure involved in them. And I really do want to know if you actually think that having these types of investigations with very limited sort of public input or people knowing much about them, if that's actually going to rebuild community trust after these things have occurred.
That's hard to say. I know in a couple of those cases you mentioned, they're actually investigated or referred to IPR, the Independent Police Review. We do have civilian oversight in some of these investigations, and that's something we've had here in Portland for a long time. And I think that's a way to give a little more access to the community as far as these investigations go, so they're not just all internal. But I think having investigations and ways to investigate and being willing to cooperate with civilian oversight and do things of that nature are ways to give more transparency and help build trust.
Any final questions? I think there's time for one more. If someone has one. Tess Risky. Tess, are you there?
Oh, hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, last one. I'll just get this in before the buzzer. Still on the PPA topic. Chief Lavelle, I'm just wondering, is it your belief that the public has a right to know the details behind Officer Hunziker's role in the leaking of the hit-and-run incident report?
I do. I think they have an interest in it, and I think once the investigations are done and the information is able to be released, then I think the public has a right to know. I think the public has an interest in knowing what their police officers are doing, how they're doing it, and if they do something wrong, that they're held accountable too. So I'm a believer that that makes sense.
Well, Chief, I want to thank you for your time today, and certainly thank all of our media guests here as well. I know we've talked about trying to find availability more regularly so that we can check in about these things. So we will keep trying to do that moving forward. But thank you, and if anybody has any follow-up questions, please reach out to the PIO team.
Yeah.
And have a great day.
Thanks, everybody.